Night shifts can feel endless. A gas station at 3 a.m., an empty store with flickering lights, a quiet drive through a sleeping city. But sometimes, the silence breaks in all the wrong ways. These are 3 true night shift horror stories. Real accounts from people who worked alone while the rest of the world slept. What they experienced will make you think twice about ever working after dark. Story 1. The ride I still think about. I drive Uber night shifts in Atlanta. Most of the time, it's uneventful. The city after midnight has its own rhythm. Strange, but quiet. College kids spilling out of parties, bartenders heading home, warehouse guys ending 12-hour shifts. Some rides are loud and messy. Others are so quiet, it's like the person in the back seat isn't even there. But 2 weeks ago, I had a ride that still messes with me. Not because something dramatic happened, but because it didn't. And maybe that's why it's stuck in my head. It was a Wednesday night, technically early Thursday morning. Around 2:40 a.m., I remember the time because I had just pulled over at a 24-hour gas station to grab coffee. I was halfway through checking the next podcast in my playlist when I got the ping. New client. Name, Thomas. Pickup location, a dead-end street near the outskirts of the city, which already seemed weird. That area is mostly overgrown brush and abandoned lots. Nobody lives out there, at least not legally. I hesitated. The last time I picked someone up in that area, it was a prank. A fake request from some teenagers who thought it'd be funny to waste a driver's time. But I hadn't had many rides that night and the distance to the pickup was short. So I accepted it. As I drove toward the location, the surroundings grew darker. Streetlights became fewer, then disappeared entirely. My headlights were the only thing cutting through the black. I turned down the music, not intentionally, just something about the silence outside made noise feel disrespectful. When I reached the location, the road narrowed into cracked pavement, hemmed in by tall trees. There were no buildings, no cars, no lights, just empty space. And then I saw him. A man was standing by the side of the road, no phone in hand, no luggage, no movement, just standing. He was tall, probably well over 6 feet, wearing a long dark coat that looked heavy, like something people wear in colder places. The way he stood, straight, but with his head tilted slightly to one side, gave me this immediate sense that something was off. Like he was listening for something far away, or maybe to something inside his own head. I slowed down, lowered the window a little, leaned toward the passenger seat. "Thomas?" I asked. He didn't speak, didn't smile. He just turned his head, not the whole body, just the head, and gave me a small, almost mechanical nod. Then opened the rear door and slid into the back seat. The door shut softly, and the air in the car suddenly felt colder. I don't know if it was just me noticing the difference, but it felt like the temperature dropped the second he got in. I confirmed the drop-off address in the app. About 20 minutes away, near an old cemetery. He didn't say anything, so I pulled away from the curb and started driving. The silence was immediate. Uncomfortable. Now, I'm used to quiet riders. Some people are just tired or drunk or don't feel like talking. I get it. But this silence was heavier, like a weight in the car. I could hear my own breathing, the hum of the tires, the faint click of the turn signal felt loud. I glanced in the mirror. He was staring out the window, completely still. Not checking his phone, not tapping his foot, not even blinking as far as I could tell. He just sat there, like a statue. About 5 minutes into the ride, I noticed something weird. The back window behind him had fogged up. Only that one. The rest of the windows were clear. I didn't have the heat or AC on. The weather was dry, but that one window, just behind his head, was fogging up fast. Condensation spread in circular patches, like someone was breathing heavily right against the glass. I glanced again. He hadn't moved, still staring outside, still silent. I gripped the wheel tighter, told myself I was being dramatic. Another few minutes passed. I was trying to focus on the road, but I kept checking the mirror. Something about him made it impossible not to. And that's when I saw it. He was looking at me. Through the rearview mirror. Not at the mirror, at me. Direct eye contact. I wasn't ready for it. His face was pale, like sickly pale. Like there was no blood underneath his skin. And his features, they looked too smooth. Like clay that had been molded but not finished. And the worst part? His eyes. They were entirely black, no whites, no iris, just black like ink. I flinched and looked forward. Didn't say anything, didn't want to. After a few seconds, I checked again. He was back to staring out the window. No sign that he'd ever looked at me. My heart was racing. I felt a thin layer of sweat on my back. I kept telling myself I was just tired, overthinking. Night shifts do that to your brain, but every few minutes I'd sneak another look. And I swear, sometimes his reflection wasn't in the mirror at all. Not missing, just wrong, off-center, delayed, like it didn't match his real position in the car. The rest of the drive felt like it took forever. Eventually, I reached the drop-off point. The road narrowed again. Trees closed in around us, and there it was, the cemetery. Old gates, rusted bars, faded stone markers visible beyond the fence. No houses nearby, just that patch of dead land and darkness. I slowed the car, rolled to a stop. I didn't even get a chance to speak. The rear door opened. I didn't hear it unlock. No sound of a seatbelt, no thank you, no goodbye. He just stepped out and started walking. Same slow pace, same tilt of the head. He didn't look back once. He walked straight toward the cemetery gates and disappeared into the rows of graves. I sat there, frozen, hands still on the wheel, then something, curiosity, fear, or just confusion, made me open the app. I wanted to look at his profile, maybe to see his picture, maybe to confirm this wasn't all in my head, but the profile was gone, just deleted, like he had never existed. I contacted Uber support. I didn't say anything crazy, just asked if the ride had gone through. Said the profile disappeared and it seemed strange. They responded with this. This temporary guest profile was created 12 minutes before pickup. It was removed by the user shortly after drop-off. We do not retain identifying information on guest accounts. I haven't taken a guest ride request since. Now, whenever I see one, the gray icon, no picture, no name, I feel my stomach tighten. My hand hovers over accept and then pulls away because I keep thinking about that night, about the silence, about the man with the tilted head and black eyes, and how he walked into a place where no one should be waiting for a ride, and how somehow, for 20 minutes, he was real. Story 2. He just stood at the window. I work the night shift at a small 24/7 convenience store in Iowa. Not a chain, just one of those old gas station-style stores with flickering lights, cracked tiles, and a weird smell you stop noticing after a few weeks. I work alone. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Nights are usually dead quiet. A few regulars stop in. Truckers, third-shift nurses, the occasional drifter. Sometimes it's peaceful. Other times, it feels like the whole world's asleep except for you. and whoever might be watching from the dark outside. This happened maybe 2 months ago. I still remember everything, because it didn't feel like just another weird night. It felt personal. It was raining, not heavy, just constant, steady rain that made a soft drumming on the roof. The wind was worse. It kept flapping the broken vinyl signage out front. Every few seconds it'd slap against the wall with this whoomp, like someone throwing something. Inside, I had the radio on low and was counting inventory in the back room. We keep a small black and white monitor back there that shows all 4 security camera feeds. And around 2:40 a.m., I noticed one of the cameras glitching. Just for a second, a flicker, like static. Then it looked like someone walked past frame, but the figure was blurry. Too fast to be natural, and too solid to be a bug or dust. I stared at the screen. Nothing. The feed stabilized. I stepped out of the back room, not really expecting to see anything, but I stopped cold. There was a man standing just outside the front glass. Not walking, not browsing the windows. Not even pacing, just standing, motionless. Black coat, hood up. I couldn't see his face, but I could tell he was facing me. He wasn't close to the door either, just off to the right in front of the refrigerated drinks section. Right in the space between the fluorescent lights and the shadows from the street. Something about him didn't feel right. The way he stood, too still, like he wasn't tired, or cold, or waiting. He was just there, and the worst part? He was staring straight at me, through the glass, not blinking, not shifting his weight, not even breathing, it seemed. At first, I assumed he was homeless or mentally ill. It happens. People sometimes stand outside hoping for warmth, food, or just a break from the rain. So I nodded politely, gave a little wave. Nothing. He didn't react at all. I stood there, watching him watch me. Maybe 5 minutes passed, no movement. Most people would have knocked or walked in, or at least looked away, but he just kept staring. Eventually, I started walking toward the door. The second I took a step, just one, he took a small step backward, still looking at me, still silent. Then he turned. Not all at once. Slowly, like he was testing his limbs, and he slipped around the corner of the building. I waited a few seconds, opened the door, stepped out into the rain. There was no one there. I walked the perimeter of the store, flashlight in hand. Nothing but wind, wet pavement, and the hum of distant traffic. I checked around the dumpsters, behind the ice machine, even climbed up on the curb by the power box. No trace of him. I felt like I was being watched. The kind of pressure on the back of your neck you can't shake. But there was no one. Eventually, I went back inside. Not even 30 seconds after I closed the door, it started shaking. Not like wind, like someone was grabbing the handle and pulling, rattling, jiggling, pausing, starting again. I sprinted to the front, but through the glass, nothing, just the parking lot and the rain. I looked at the security monitor. Camera was clear, nothing on the feed. I locked the door and backed away. My hands were shaking. That's when I called the police. 12 minutes later, a squad car pulled into the lot. The officer, a younger guy, asked if anything was stolen or broken. I said no. He asked if I saw a weapon. Again, no. I showed him the footage. At first, there was nothing. The guy didn't show up on the camera feed during that first stare down, but then the officer pointed something out. There was a shadow, barely visible, like the outline of a man just outside the range of the lights. Too far for the motion sensor to trigger, but just close enough to register in frame. Then the officer asked to check the other camera angles, especially the back. We pulled footage from a camera aimed at the back delivery door, And that's when we saw him. The same man, standing right by the back entrance. Closer now. Hood still up. Same coat. But this time, he was holding something in his right hand. It looked like a tool, maybe a crowbar or a pry bar. Long, metallic, with a sharp edge. He wasn't moving. He stood there, just stood there for an hour. Facing the door, no knocking, no forcing, no pacing, just watching it. The officer froze the footage, tried enhancing it, but the image got blurrier the more we zoomed in, and then something weird. The man was in the frame 1 second, and then wasn't. He didn't walk away, there was no movement. One frame, he's there, the next, he's gone, like he vanished. Or like the footage was missing a few seconds. The cops searched the area, filed a report, told me to call again if anything happened, but they never found anyone matching the description. A few days later, when our manager came in for a maintenance check, he found dents on the back door. Small, but deep. Like someone had jammed something into the edge of the frame again and again, testing where it might give. It's been a few weeks now. I still work at the store, but I don't do night shifts anymore. I told them I couldn't. I didn't give a reason. But sometimes, even during the day, I catch myself glancing at the glass door, looking for a figure, a shape, a face with no features, just standing there, waiting. Story 3, he didn't want to pay. He just waited. I work nights at a gas station off a 2-lane highway in North Carolina. Not one of the big chains, just an old, half-forgotten stop with flickering pumps and a faded sign that buzzes louder than it glows. It's not a bad job, honestly. Most nights are dead quiet. You get the occasional trucker, someone on a long drive, or a guy grabbing cigarettes and coffee before heading home. 3 a.m. is the loneliest hour, though. That's when the silence feels too heavy, like the world's holding its breath. And on this night, it held it a little too long. It was 3:10 a.m. when it happened. I was sitting behind the counter, half watching an old movie on my phone, half glancing out the window every few minutes like I always do. The road outside was empty. No cars in either direction. The only sound was the hum of the ceiling fan and the buzzing light over pump 3. Then, out of nowhere, headlights. They came around the bend slow. A dark blue Toyota Camry. Early 2000s model. The paint was dull, covered in road dust. Only one headlight was working. The car rolled in, circled past the pumps once, then pulled into spot 4, right in front of the store. It was slow, deliberate. The man who stepped out wasn't anyone I recognized. Tall, skinny, maybe mid-50s. Wearing a windbreaker zipped all the way up and dark jeans that were soaked at the bottom, like he'd been walking through wet grass. He didn't move like a tired man. He moved like someone who had nowhere to be. Like he had all the time in the world. And from the second I saw him, something about him felt off. Not threatening, just wrong, like a bad copy of a human being. He walked around the front of his car, picked up the gas nozzle and started pumping. But here's the thing, he never paid. That's not how this station works. It's prepay only after midnight. That's policy. And we've got signs posted everywhere. Even a little digital message on the pump screen that reads, "See cashier before fueling." But he just grabbed the handle and started fueling like it was the most natural thing in the world. I watched for a second, thinking maybe I missed him somehow. Maybe he paid with a card that didn't go through, or it glitched and still let him pump. So I double-checked the register. Nothing, no transaction, and I know I probably should have just called it in or waited. But something about the way he stood out there, I felt like I needed to do something. So I stepped out from behind the counter, opened the door. The chime rang. That familiar ding-ding we hear 100 times a day. I stepped outside into the cold air. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still wet. My shoes made a soft sticking sound with each step. I called out, "Hey, you forgot to pay." He didn't move, didn't even flinch. Just stood there with one hand on the pump. The gas had already stopped flowing. He hadn't hung it back up, just froze in place like a paused video. I took another step toward him. That's when I heard it. Not loudly, just barely above the wind. He whispered, "Are you sure I have to?" I stopped walking. There was something wrong with his voice. It wasn't threatening, it was calm. Gentle, almost, but cold. Like someone trying to mimic how people speak. Like someone who had practiced it. And then I saw his hand. The one not holding the pump. He was holding a knife. Not pointing it, not waving it, just holding it by his side. Casual, relaxed, as if it belonged there. I didn't even register what it was at first. But the moment my brain caught up, every part of me screamed, "Get back inside." He turned his head, slowly, and looked right at me, our eyes locked. And he smiled. Not a friendly smile, not a confused smile, but the kind of smile that feels wrong. The kind that seems too wide, too slow, too still. Like he wasn't smiling at me. Like he was smiling at the idea of me. I backed up, one step, then two. Then I turned, rushed back inside and slammed the door shut. Locked it, hit the emergency button under the register. Then I grabbed the phone and called 911. My voice was shaking when I gave them the address. I kept looking out the window, kept expecting him to be gone, but he wasn't. He was standing right outside the door now. He wasn't trying to get in, wasn't shouting or making demands. He just stood there, looking. His face was blank, his eyes unblinking, his hands by his sides. The knife was still in his right hand, loose, like it didn't matter. He stood there for 9 minutes. I know because I watched the clock the entire time. He didn't move, didn't shift, didn't react when the red and blue lights started approaching from down the road. Only then, when the patrol car turned into the lot, did he finally move. He walked back to the Camry, got in, and drove off. Slowly, like he was memorizing every inch of the road. The cops pulled up just as he turned the corner. They chased after him, but he was already gone. I showed them the footage from the exterior cams. They watched silently, until the moment he looked directly at the pump camera. And then the video feed froze, glitched, then pixelated, and then the entire segment was corrupted. Just that section, the one where he turns toward the lens. The officers tried to run the license plate, but it didn't register. No record, not stolen, just non-existent. They took my statement, told me to call again if he returned. I didn't sleep when I got home that morning, didn't eat either. But what really shook me came the next day. When I opened the store with the morning shift manager, she asked why there were fingerprints on the inside of the front window. I walked over, and written clear as day in the condensation, as if someone had pressed their finger into the glass from the inside, were the words, "Next time, you'll come out later."